So what an eventful day it was yesterday for Alabama fans everywhere. You had a coaching search finally getting filled as the Alabama Crimson Tide announced who was going to be the offensive line coach and who was going to be the tight end coach, only for a few hours later for more coaching vacancies to arise, though it did not take long for Coach Kalen DeBoer to solve that. And then last night in the late hours, Alabama got a massive win out the transfer portal, and today that's what we need to break down, as Alabama adds in former Michigan safety Keon Sabb, but they also get a tight end out of Washington in Josh Cuevas, and today we need to break them both down. But before we can, as always, y'all know the drill. I have got to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, Y for yes, N for no. Are you excited that Keon Sabb is joining the Crimson Tide? And let me know what you're thinking. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification as I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it, and if you enjoyed the content, be sure to like and comment down below, as those interactions seem small. They are massive to content creators such as myself. But having said all that, let's jump right into this. And where do we begin? Because Keon Sabb is a massive win for the Crimson Tide. If we look back last season, he was someone who got active as the season went on, and I always think that that's important. Whenever you have a young player and the coaching staff is asking more of him as the moments get brighter, that to me shows how much faith they had placed in Sabb. And in fact, if we look, he's coming off of a season where he had 28 tackles, 4 pass deflections, and 2 interceptions, and as I said, he was playing his best football in the biggest moments for Michigan, and in my opinion, that means a lot. Another thing about Sabb that I love is he has that intersectionality we're always talking about when we're talking about players out of the transfer portal. What are you looking for? The kind of unique things that the transfer portal can grant you. And one of the first things we always talk about is that if you're getting a player out the transfer portal, you're trying to get a player with some positive experience. When we look at this Alabama secondary, yes, it is loaded with talent. We've talked about this time and time again. Nick Saban gave Alabama fans and Coach Kalen DeBoer a parting gift in terms of that 2024 recruiting class that featured so many blue-chip defensive backs. But at the same time, as talented as that secondary will be, you don't have a ton of experience and you don't have the depth that you would really like. Sabb helps solve both of those equations. First and foremost, he has the experience. He might not have as much experience as Malachi Moore, but he was playing big-time football in big-time moments, and that instantly can be added into this secondary. 2, he still has a ton of eligibility left. And that's the intersectionality of the transfer portal I always refer to, is that if you can help it, you're trying to get a player that features experience that can help the guys around him get up to speed, which Keon Sabb can do, but you're also trying to get somebody that has eligibility remaining. You try and walk this line, because if you can help it, you want that guy in your room for more than 1 year. That's exactly what Alabama's getting with Keon Sabb. That's what makes the transfer portal so interesting, is because you're getting a player you know has successfully made the jump from high school football to college football, and you're getting a player that has experience. You're getting a player that has eligibility. There is no understating what a big win this is, especially when we really dive in and we've been talking about where Alabama was most affected with the losses via the transfer portal, and it was that secondary. Now you add in one of the best players in the transfer portal since it has opened, and certainly probably the best available player in the transfer portal up until he committed to Alabama. This is a big win, and there were other big-name schools going after Keon Sabb. Let's get this understood. When we were talking about the schools you need to be on the lookout for, of course, we talked about Alabama. We talked about the Oklahoma Sooners, as Keon Sabb was formerly committed to Clemson when Brent Venables was the defensive coordinator. And with Brent Venables making the move from Clemson to Oklahoma, it was interesting to watch, especially because they offered his brothers as he entered the transfer portal, though important to remember, Alabama had offered them before Sabb had entered the transfer portal. But Oklahoma was one of those teams that had been recruiting at a high level, and they've been utilizing the transfer portal very well under Brent Venables, but they weren't alone. The Oregon Ducks were another team that was coming after Keon Sabb, and we know how effective Dan Lanning and Oregon can be on the recruiting trail, where Oregon has had top recruiting classes under Lanning, and they've been able to get talent via the transfer portal. Colorado was in the mix. You name it, pretty much every team that could bring in Sabb was trying to get him. And the why to that question, well, that's simple. You're talking about a guy with supreme ability. When you turn on the tape, there's a few things that are going to fly off the tape for you for Keon Sabb. First and foremost, his coverage ability. That, to me, really stood out. He is constantly real sticky in coverage. You're not going to see guys get a ton of separation from him, and he has got the ability to break on a ball and either deflect it or get big-time interceptions, which we saw him do last season. But he is not shying away from contact. Usually when you have these coverage guys, you get asked the question right after, okay, he's supremely good in coverage. How is he at the line of scrimmage? How is he against the run? How is he in tackling? Well, Sabb has all of those qualities, which makes him such a unique player, and why so many teams were after him when he entered the transfer portal, because he has those qualities that can be hard to get in terms of getting a guy that's the total package. Alabama just got that, and this is going to go a long ways into helping Alabama's secondary hit the ground running, because now when you look at it, you have two guys that have some experience in there, and Malachi Moore and Keon Sabb, and in theory, whenever we look at this, they can help the guys around him. But I know, as excited as Alabama fans are about this addition, Kane Womack, the new defensive coordinator for the Crimson Tide, has got to be over the moon. Because I can imagine he was already very excited. One of the things we've talked about extensively here on this channel is that everybody on the outside is saying that Alabama has collapsed. But if you're Kane Womack, if you're Linguist, if you're Coach Hitchler, and you're hearing from all these outside places that Alabama is devout of talent now, that everybody left, it's an empty room, and you're looking around, and let's say you look specifically at the defensive back room, and you look at just one recruiting class, the class of 2024, that featured 3 5-star defensive backs. Already, Coach Womack is looking at this situation saying, if this is a rebuild, I'll take a rebuild all day, every day. Coach Womack now has more talent in one room from one recruiting class in terms of 5 stars than he previously had at his former stop. And this is what I think we need to remember, right? Yes, Alabama lost very talented players, but yes, Alabama still has got a lot of talent on the roster. And this 2024 recruiting class is going to go a long ways into helping them mitigate those losses. But Keon Sabb is a big win, and if you're Womack, you already had all these young 5-star freshman defensive backs coming in, and now you get a guy that just played in a national championship, you get a guy that was just balling out in the playoffs. Kane Womack is going to be over the moon, especially when we start talking about what Sabb is going to be able to do in this 4-2-5. He is going to be able to eat in it. But as I alluded to when we first started talking, Sabb was not the only win Alabama got, and in fact, they got former Washington tight end Josh Cuevas. Josh Cuevas stands 6'3", 239 pounds per ESPN, and had a season where he had 4 receptions for 164 yards, 1 touchdown. But the thing that's so wild to me is he averaged 41 yards per. And if we actually look at his game log, it's kind of wild because he has 1 reception here for 57 yards. He has another reception here for 57 yards, another one for 31 yards, another one for 19 yards. What that tells me is though he didn't get the ball much, every time he touched the ball, he was getting a ton of yards. So it's going to be interesting to see what this looks like. We know that this is going to be a high-powered offense, and I love the tight end coach hire in Brian Ellis because when you go back and you study what he was doing, that, in my opinion, was a great hire for the tight end coach vacancy. And then we start talking, I apologize, then we start talking about the tight end talent already there between Diprey, between Odom, now Cuevas. It's going to be a lot of fun to see what these guys are able to do in this new offensive scheme, and I certainly can't wait, but I certainly can't wait to hear from all of you. Hop down to the comments, let me know what you're thinking. That's it. See ya.